Today I'm going to be adding the clasp to this seed bead fall colors bracelet, and I'm going to be using the same brown thread and a beading needle on this end. First, I'm going to start with, I'm not sure if I'm going to do 3 or 4 of the brown seed beads, but let's put them on there and see how long that makes it. So I think I'm going to do 4. Then on the last one, you won't go back through, you'll skip going back through the last one and you'll go through the other 3 that we just added. And that will turn that one the other way. We want to turn this one the opposite orientation as the other 3. So these are, the hole is this way and these, the hole are this way. Then we'll go back through the opposite side of, so we're coming out over here, we'll go through over here to get this attached to the rest of the bracelet. And then we're just gonna go back up and down through those a few times to get that stabilized. And this is gonna be our toggle end. And you could do several other options. You could have stopped at where you had 2 or 3 and added like a wire guard or thread guard, which is basically like a horseshoe shape, like a U that is metal, and you can take that and put the thread over it and then connect jump rings and a regular clasp to that. Or you could add the jump rings directly to your end beads and then add a regular clasp and jump rings like that. Or you can sew a toggle using the beads. So you still will need all your regular tools, obviously thread and needle, the pliers to pull that through, and you'll need scissors. And then I'm gonna put this back in, back through this side, and then I'll just work this thread down through the body of the bracelet a little bit just to be able to tie that off. So I'm going through this brown bead right below this last yellow bead, like this yellow bead is the tip and then the brown bead below it. So you will have to wiggle your needle a little bit. I'm just going to work this down a few rows and then tie it off because I won't need the thread anymore on this side. So now I'm going to use some wire. Was just opened. This is 24 gauge. Might not be able to use the first little bit because of the bend in it. So I'm going to cut that piece off. Oh, and you can see it unrolled really quick. So I'm going to cut it extra long. I'd say at least 2 inches, but I'll just cut it here. It might be like 3 inches. That should be plenty. I'll straighten that out a little bit. I've got flat nose piece on this set of pliers. I'll put that through our bead that's oriented this way. That will become the center bead for the toggle. And then you can just decide. So I have yellow here close. So I think I'll do a couple of green next. So that's 1. Do a green on each side. And I want it to be at least as wide as the bracelet, which is 7 beads wide. So I'll do green, and I'll do 5 beads if I do a brown on each side next. And kind of just keep them with my pattern where I use the brown to break up the other colors. And then I'm going to do orange. So that'll make 7 beads. So I've got 4 on either side of the center bead that I added with the thread. I may end up adding one additional brown bead on each side. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. So I'm going to add one additional brown bead on each side. So that'll be a good sized toggle for this width of bracelet. So then I'm going to push it to one side because I don't need all the excess now. Push out that last bead that I added, and I will push this over it. So this bead will be kept away from the rest at the end there. And then this will loop around, and we will take that end, and then we'll start wrapping that end around the wire in front of that bead. So I will need a pair of chain nose pliers for that. So I'll just hold it right there with the chain nose pliers where the wire is crossing itself, just beside this bead. Then I can just wrap that around. You can use your pliers to push it up close to your bead. You might need to hold it with a second set of pliers so that you can work that wire. I'm gonna bend this over just a little so that those beads don't fall off. So just pushing that end of the wire where it comes out of this bead close to, and then pushing that loop I just made close to the bead. And you only need to wrap it like 2 or 3 times. So I'll just put another couple of little turns. I'm losing beads on this side, so I can wait and add those in the same order if that works better for you. So just try and make that flush there. Hold the wire, not the bead, because the bead is glass, so it will break. That's the second loop. Now I usually do about 3 loops, so I'll do 3 and push that up, and then I can trim this piece flush here with my snips. So I'll just take those, snip that off. And this is the kind of toggle I was planning to do with the candy cane pattern. This is what I was talking about with the wire. And we have to use the small gauge wire because the larger gauges won't fit through the small. These are the 11-0 seed beads, so they won't fit through there if you use too large of a gauge, because the holes on these seed beads is very small. And then we're ready for our other end, and we're just going to do the same thing. I'm going to put my beads back on because they came off while I was working that wire on that end. We will hold this last bead here out from the other beads. I don't need this bend anymore. And we're going to put a little bend in there, probably a little closer, because you can use the other side as a gauge of how much room you need to leave for space for how much the wrapping is going to take. So it doesn't look like it's going to take much. So then we'll fold that over back onto itself. And this smaller gauge wire is pretty easy to bend, so it's easy to work with. So if you put a little crank in there, it will come out. So then we're just gonna pull that flush, bend it down, wrap it around. We'll hold that wire here, keep it off the bead onto the wire. Just keep tugging that one loop, scoot it over, 2 loops, keep it flush, do our 3rd loop there, and then we're ready to just snip that little piece off right here. I really like to hold the bead because they are delicate. I don't want to start all over on that. And then we'll push this piece of wire flush, and our last little bit that we just snipped off, we'll push that in flush on the wire that it's wrapped around. And you can always hold the other end where you've already got your wire wrapped. And the other end is going to be, I've already got the beads mapped out for that end, and it's going to be a lot easier. It's going to be all needle and thread only. So it looks kind of like that for the toggle. And you can adjust your wire if it got a little bent during the process there. And then we're ready to thread our needle back on this end. So now I have the thread coming out here, ready for the other end. And for this, I do have my idea already mapped out. So I'm going to be adding. We're only going to do it until it's the right size for this toggle. So we're going to keep an eye on what the toggle will and will not fit through. So brown, red, brown, orange, brown, green, brown. I don't think that's going to be big enough, so we'll do yellow, then brown again. That might be good. So then yellow, brown, green, brown, then orange, brown, and then red. And then we're back to what should be our last brown. And we'll pull this tight and we'll see if it works with our toggle size, because I don't want to secure it if it's not going to work for the toggle that we've made. So it still looks a little short to me. It would loop around like this. Then the toggle would need to fit through there. And the toggle needs to be able to go through. Yeah, I think we're gonna need at least one more set of beads. Because if that's tight, that's gonna be a pretty tight fit. So I'm gonna take these off from here. I want it to be the same on both sides of the loop. So I'm gonna take them off what would have repeated from the other side, starting with the yellow bead. And then I'm gonna add red then brown. See if we get a good idea of how big that's gonna be. So that'll be the center. I think that'll do it. So then we're ready to repeat with red, then brown. We're back to yellow, brown, green and brown, orange, then brown, and then back to our first red, then brown. Let's see if that's going to do it. This length of toggle that we just added, I think that is going to be perfect. It looks a lot better. So we'll just loop that with our hand, put the toggle through, and when it's a little tighter, I think that will be just right. So we'll just put this back through our end bead from the other side, and then we will go back through all of our loop beads again just to secure it. We want to have at least a couple of layers of thread to keep that snug. So we're going back through all of those beads we just added for the loop. And you can pick up as many as you can. And then pick up the rest of them if it's too hard to keep them because your needle is straight and they're kind of in a circle now. Go through the last little few here. Back through. So that's through all of the loop beads the second time. So we've got a nice fall colored loop. And then you can try to go through a third time, which might be a little more difficult, or you can tie it off. I might try one more time just to make sure it stays secure because the clasp is going to carry really the weight of the whole bracelet. So you want it to be kind of snug if you can get it. It may be hard to get it through a lot of beads at once. You may need your pliers. So just do that and then again through the rest of them. I don't think mine is going to go through more than 3 times just because of the size of the holes on the beads and the thickness of the thread. So the thickness of the thread does make a difference. And you got to keep, it will get kind of wrapped around itself and it'll tie itself in a knot. So it's good to try and keep your thread straight if possible. Just keep doing as many as I can until I get back down to that main part of the bracelet. Okay, this will end my third round through there, and you can see now I'm coming out right here beside the yellow bead, but I can just go from this bead to the row before in that center bead if I can pull this through, which it might be getting difficult to pull this through because I did just have to go through that bead to add this piece of thread. So you may have to just use your pliers and wiggle your needle until you can get it through. And then once you get it through that one, you can work it back in however you need to, whatever beads have the least layers of thread through them. And then you'll just tie that off like you would if you were ending your thread in the body. And then you will have a full bracelet. And this is the final project. So you can see we've got our loop and our toggle we just added. And this is the fall colors beaded bracelet, which I have another time-lapse video of me doing using the square stitch, and there is a video of the square stitch with larger beads if you want to watch that on my channel. And that is the final product. So thank you for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed this how to make a clasp for a beaded bracelet, and stay tuned for more jewelry tutorials on my channel.